Good morning, students. Welcome to Office Communications. My name is Mirja Kaingunga, and I am your tutor today for this subject. I am a senior foreign exchange dealer by profession, and I'm also the head of sales at one of the local banks in the country. Office communication. I believe that at this point in time you have read through your textbooks and you've covered Module 1, which is the key principles of effective business. I just quickly want to touch on the outlines of Module 1, the importance of effective communication. These are the things that you have already covered. The communication process, categories of communication, formal and informal communication, verbal and non-verbal communication, listening skills, barriers to effective communication. Example number 1. Mr. Motinga, an economist with a clear voice, has been invited to give a public lecture on the Namibian budget speech. The lecture is being recorded by Global African Television to be aired on their business profile program. Mr. Motinga begins his lecture with the following greeting. Good morning, students. I thank you for this opportunity to present on the budget speech. It is great to know that you future leaders are keen to know what is happening in the live market. As Mr. Motinga presents, he uses PowerPoint slides with graphs and figures. 12 students begin to lean forward as he begins to talk about tax cuts on specific income brackets. There are students in the class who continually keep sneezing. As he sneezes, some young ladies in the class start passing him tissues and others start staring at him. The students start talking and laughing as the tissue is passed on. Professor Stein then shouts out aloud and points his finger at the students saying, "Shh! Hey, come on guys!" At the end of the lecture, 6 students put up their hands to ask questions. One student asks, "When will the tax cut be effective?" After the presentations, copies of the budget speech are distributed. Question 1. A. Is Mr. Motinga's communication effective or not? Give 2 reasons why. As you have read in the text, or whenever you are given an example of something, or you're reading through a questionnaire, always make sure firstly that you read with understanding. Question A. Is Mr. Motinga's communication effective or not? You need to give 2 reasons for that. 1A. Mr. Motinga is an effective communicator. Hence, we say that Mr. Motinga is effective because he's providing information and empowering students with knowledge on the budget speech. His clear voice allowed for students to be attentive. The attentiveness of the students is demonstrated by their body language by leaning forward as Mr. Motinga presented. Question B. Identify and plot the 8 elements of the communication process. The communication process can be found on page 5 of the Office Communication textbook in example 1A. The 8 elements of the communication process are as follows. Number 1, the sender. The sender is Mr. Motinga, who is the economist, because he's the one who's giving the presentation. Number 2, encoding. He uses words by using his voice. The message here is the budget speech. The receiver are the students and the lecturer. Decoding happens when the students interpret the motivation concepts. And then the channel, verbal and using PowerPoint presentations on the laptop. That is what Mr. Motinga used. That's his channel, because he uses the PowerPoint presentation on the laptop as well as verbal communication. Feedback. 12 students lean forward, which shows that they are attentive, and 6 other students put up their hands to ask questions. There's also noise as well. This noise takes place when there's talking, laughing, and sneezing, which distracted the lecture. This distraction is shown by how the lecturer says, shh, to calm down all the students. Question 1C, in which category does the communication fall? Categories of communication are on page 7 in your office communication textbook. You get different types of communication. And in this case, in this example that we have, we've noticed that there is mass communication. Mass communication is the communication between the sender and a large audience. The lecture is recorded by Global Africa Television and will be watched by viewers all over the world, hence this being mass communication. There is also interpersonal communication, which is direct communication to the students and to the lecturers, which is the direct communication that Mr. Motinga has with the students and the lecturers. D, is Mr. Motinga formal or casual? Mr. Motinga was formal as his greeting is professional and his English was clear and understandable. Identify verbal and non-verbal communication that Mr. Motinga used. Mr. Motinga used both verbal communication and non-verbal communication. The verbal communication is a PowerPoint worded slides and the written speech that has been distributed at the end of his presentation. The non-verbal communication is the visual, such as the graphs. And the last question of question 1, which is F, identify the barriers of communication in this text. Barriers to effective communication. Those barriers can be seen on page 20 of the office communication textbook. We have physiological barriers, which is the students that just kept sneezing. The student that kept sneezing could not listen well and concentrate well. And then there's also a physical barrier where the students kept laughing as the other one was sneezing. Those are physical barriers. So you can just familiarize yourself with those in page 20 of in the office communication textbook. Module 2, spoken communication. The outline of module 2. Spoken communication was defined. The role of the voice and language in spoken communication was explained. Techniques to improve the voice, planning and preparing in spoken communication, direct and indirect communication, types of spoken communication, assertive spoken communication. Example 2. Penny has a job interview at Executive Economists and she arrives 15 minutes early. She's formally dressed with a pen and notebook in her hand. As she enters the boardroom, she is greeted by Mr. Schultz, Miss Grace, and Miss Marta. She is also greeted by Mr. Peace, who is teleconferencing from Johannesburg. Mr. Peace, okay, this is just a dialogue. This part is just the dialogue that takes place. Mr. Peace says, "Tell us about yourself." Penny answers, "First of all, thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce myself. I would describe myself as a professional economic reporter, someone who is easy to get along with and can handle a heavy load." Mr. Schultz then asks Penny, "Penny, tell us about your work experience." Penny then answers, "I have 5 years work experience as an economic reporter at Thomson Reuters." Mr. Schultz then asks Penny, "As an economist, have you experienced stress?" Penny then answers, "Yes." Mrs. Simata is an elderly lady who is deaf in one ear and pronounces the R with an L. She speaks very loud and squints her eyes while talking. Mrs. Simata asks, "Do you have experience in writing reports and business analysis?" Penny then asks, "Pardon me, Mrs. Simata, can you repeat your question?" Mr. Schultz then interrupts and he says, "Do you have experience in writing reports and business analysis?" Penny then answers, "Yes, I do." Mr. Peace then says, "What qualifications do you have and what year did you finish your studies?" Penny then answers, I have a Bachelor's of Economics degree and I completed it in 2007. Students, kindly note that whenever you read a text or a question, make sure that you always understand that which you have read, because if you understand it, then it will be easier for you to answer the questions that follow it. Question 2A. Do you consider Penny's spoken communication good or bad? And motivate your answer. Penny's spoken communication is good. This is mainly because she is understood by the panelists as she answered, her grammar is correct, and her volume used is effective, as Mr. Peace, who is on the other line in Johannesburg, who's teleconferencing, can clearly understand and hear as she spoke. Question B, do you think Penny planned for the interview? Motivate your answer. Yes, she planned for an interview. She had her notebook and pen at hand. She arrived early for the interview, which was the 15 minutes early, as we have read from our text. And she answered her first question with confidence. Question C. What type of spoken communication was used in the interview? Is it direct or indirect? Spoken communication, there were two types that were used. Both direct spoken communication as well as indirect spoken communication. Direct spoken communication, that is face-to-face communication, which is face-to-face communication where Penny spoke to the panelists. Direct spoken communication is also a two-way process of information whereby Penny spoke to the panelists and the panelists spoke back to her. There's also indirect spoken communication in the text that we have just read through. The contact with Mr. Peace, whom Penny could not see face to face. An electronic system is used to communicate with Mr. Peace in Johannesburg. D. Are there any barriers to spoken communication in the interview, and motivate your answer? Barriers to effective communication. Yes, there are some barriers to communication in the text that we've just read just now. There's semantic barriers where Mrs. Simata mixed her L's and the R's. This barrier hampers mutual understanding. And then there were also physical barriers as well in the interview, where Mrs. Haloliwa, who kept looking at her watch. This could have given mixed messages that Penny is wasting her time or that she needs to go somewhere urgently. E. Name 3 types of questions used in the interview. Remember that most of these things you have already covered in your business literacy textbook, and now you are covering it again in your office communication. There were 3 types of questions that we noted in the texts that we just read through now. We have closed questions, and the closed question is, as an economist, have you experienced stress? And Penny's answer was a yes. There were also open-ended questions, such as, tell us about yourself. This is a general question that could result in a very long answer. And then there were also specific questions as well. What qualification do you have, and what year did you complete your studies? It was very short, specific, and to the point. In Module 3, you would have covered written communication. Now, the outline of written communication is as follows. Number 1, the importance of written communication in English. The roles of written communication, the roles of words and grammar in written communication, using simple, concise, and correct English, capturing your audience attention with effective headings, layouts, and graphic material, extracting and summarizing key information, editing written material, the effects of persuasive writing, and types of written communication used in business. Now we're going to cover question 3. Kindly note that the below is a form of written communication. In the below, we have an email where the email has been sent, or let me rather put it like this. The sender is Mr. K. Ntema. or it's coming from Kane Tema. It's been sent to N. Smith, and Mr. King Wanapo has been copied in, and the title is English. The email reads as follows. Hello there, Nico. I trust you are well. The requirements for the Masters in English Scholarship as per our telephonic conversation. Namibian citizen between ages 23 to 35. Bachelor's in English, upper second. And going forth, it also says that should you need any further information, please be free to holler at me. Yours faithfully, Kent Ntema, who is a director. What type of written communication is above? As just mentioned now, the above communication is an email. It's a system for transferring a message from one sender using one computer to a receiver using another, usually via a network. Question B, which recipient is copied in on the above? Kenyu Anapo is copied in on the above. As you can see there, Kenyu Anapo is CC'd. It's that part where it says CC'd. That's who has been copied in, which is Kenyu Anapo. Does the subject reflect the body of the mail? If not, give it a suitable heading. English. This subject is quite broad and it does not really explain, English could be anything. It could be spoken English, it could be written English that you're talking about. So this subject is not really clear and concise. So I would say no. The existing subject does not reflect the body of the email. It does not explain what the English is all about. The suggested subject is requirements for the English scholarship. Requirements for the English scholarship as a subject sounds it's more to the point, and just by reading it already you know that this email is about what is needed in applying for a scholarship. Work readiness. It is very important that you yourself are ready for the workplace, meaning that when you step out and you get into the workplace, that you've tried to, as much as you're not in the workplace yet, that you familiarize yourself with the concepts and the things that run in the workplace. In Module 4, you covered what work readiness is, self-management, goal setting, developing and maintaining filing systems, time management, working in teams, dealing with conflict, ethics and professionalism in business, and ethics in accounting. Before we even get to any examples, it is important that you just take note of the following notes. These are the important notes. Code of ethics. Code of ethics is a set of written rules describing acceptable behavior. Code of ethics is important to business so that staff know what is right and wrong in the environment. Staff know what is acceptable behavior. It is also important to have goals because goals motivate you. Goals give you direction and goals measure your achievements. Qualities of the code of conduct in an accounting environment. Some of these qualities in some companies can also be viewed as values, because values are also very important. One of the qualities are integrity, objectivity, diligence, professionalism, transparency, fairness, service delivery, and accountability. When you step into your new workplace, it's very important that you understand these terms and that you know exactly what they mean. And that even when you get into that environment, that you begin to apply it, apply integrity, fairness. Always remember to be fair, be professional, and deliver an excellent service. And always remember, another very important and key thing is procrastination. Procrastination is defined as the thief of time, and it should be avoided at all times. Within the work environment, you'll also need to know about self-management. Self-management is the technique or the practice of being in control of oneself. The benefits of self-management are less stress, self-confidence, better time management, better planning, goal setting, and organization, or just organizing yourself. We have come to the end of the tutorial on office communication. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me on the following number, which is 081 760 6079. Thank you very much and good luck.